Hi, everyone. Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to this week's author journey. Really excited today because I'm going to be joined by another hybrid publisher, but somebody who has really led the charge in the hybrid publishing realm. I'm going to do a little introduction and then I'll bring her up to join me. Her name is Brooke Warner, and she's the publisher of She Writes Press and Spark Press. She's the president of Warner Coaching Inc. and the author of Write On Sisters, Greenlight Your Book, which I have here, which has now become my Bible. What's Your Book? And 3 books on memoir. Brooke is a TEDx speaker, a weekly podcaster of Right Minded with co-host Grant Faulkner of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. For those of you who haven't experienced that, it's really worth looking into. And she's the former executive editor of Seal Press, and she writes a regular column for Publishers Weekly. So has amazing background and information to share with us today. So I'm going to bring her up to join me. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Anne. Good to see you.
Nice to see you, and welcome to the author journey. So excited to have you join me today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're kind of covering both coasts. I'm on the east coast of Canada and you're on the west coast of the US. Is that, you're still
That's
there?
right. Yes, I am in California. Exactly.
Excellent. We have, Heather Hendry has joined us. She says, can't wait, excited to be here with you today, Anne and Brooke. So we do have a live chat that if folks are joining us and we're talking about something that you have curiosity for and want to pop in some questions, I'll watch for your questions and comments and we'll dive right in. So again, welcome. And, I did kind of hold up this Greenlight Your Book. And I'm going to tell you, when I started reading this, I started underlining excerpts, and it's kind of focused on or directed to indie authors. But I was an indie author before I was a publisher. So talk about this green light revolution. I'm loving that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the subject of that book and the subject of my TEDx talk, which is the concept there is just about how authors can tend to look for external validation, someone to say yes, someone to anoint them and say, yes, your book is good enough and we want to publish it. And they have a dream of like the red carpet treatment and all of the things that are going to happen and they're going to be best-selling authors. And that is just largely not the experience, or if it is the experience, it's the experience of the 1%. And so the idea behind a green light revolution is that you have a book that is worthwhile, whether or not a traditional publisher is saying yes to you, and finding that force, and that validation from within yourself is going to be the thing that will lead you to the finish line, especially nowadays, because the reasons that authors get rejected have little to do with the actual quality of the book or the story itself. The reason authors get rejected is because of their lack of author brand or celebrity or platform. And so I just feel very strongly about this, that there needs to be this space where we're honoring authors for the beautiful projects that they have and kind of get past this gatekeeping problem that exists in traditional publishing.
Oh, truer words were never spoken. I love it. And, you came at it from traditional publishing. And one of the things that, and again, there were so many excerpts that I wanted to address, but just a couple of really key ones. You said the Indian Revolution is here, but you also say that the fact that anyone can publish a book has created a new paradigm that is somewhat labyrinthine. I love that word. So it's true. Like, it's opened the floodgates.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the roadblocks or challenges in getting through that labyrinth?
Well, I think probably what I was speaking to there is that it is easier to get published than ever, and there needs to be higher standards as a result, right? That this and that's why I'm such an advocate of hybrid, because the best hybrids, of course, really function as very much like traditional publishers.
Mm-hmm.
We're guiding through the publishing process. We're making sure that there's editorial and production integrity. And so this process, like I think self-publishing is fabulous, except that authors don't know what they don't know. And
Right.
so then they can make a lot of mistakes, and no matter who you are, you're probably going to make mistakes with your first book, no matter what. And so it's a learning curve. Now, for some people, that's perfectly fine,
Hmm.
but there's so much legacy in book publishing that it would behoove anyone who is going through it for the first time to hire people to support them. Or if you're going to self-publish, then build a self-publishing team.
Hmm. And tell us, who would the members of that self-publishing team be?
It would be, well, at the bare minimum, a cover designer. I don't think that any author, unless they are really strongly a graphic designer who has actually designed books previously, and that's not
Hmm.
most authors, shouldn't be their own book designer. And interior designer, I mean, there's so much software right now too, where you can just plug in your book and it
Hmm.
spits out interior design. But I still think that this is a like an artisan industry,
Hmm.
and that books deserve to have individual attention, and that the interior should not be templated. That you should really hire a designer, a cover designer, and or an interior designer. Certainly
Hmm.
editors, probably more than one editor, at least a
Hmm.
copy editor and a proofreader, if not also a developmental editor.
Right.
So that team suddenly looks kind of big. And then on the other side, maybe you have a social media person, maybe you have a publicist. There's just a lot that you can build around you if you want to really make a go of being a successful author.
Absolutely. And we have Karen Dean, who has joined us. Hi, Karen. Karen is an author, wrote a book, We Are Unbreakable, which is flying off the shelves. It's one of the Nova Scotia Strong sort of themes, but she says definitely money well spent. So she has gone through that process as well. And I'm sure if any designers and editors are watching, they're cheering that that comment that you've made. So
Absolutely.
and you probably have heard this when I start chatting with an author about between self-publishing and traditional and hybrid, and I say, if you have the wherewithal or the passion or determination to do the self-publishing route, and you can put that kind of team together, then that's terrific, and I can coach someone through that. But what I find, and I wonder if you find the same thing, is that once an author realizes all of those moving parts, they just say, "Ooh, that's why I need a She Writes Press to help me
Yeah.
through this."
Yeah, most authors I think do want that. And then there are a handful of authors, of course, who want to learn the ropes, and they're probably people who really aspire to be publishers, and that's fine. It's for those people, perhaps becoming a self-published author and then moving into something else is a great career path. But as you and I both know, it's hard work, and
Hmm.
turning over your process to someone else who knows what they're doing, so that you can focus on the hard work of getting your book out into the world. If,
Hmm.
if you're becoming an author because you really want to get your book out, you want to push it out in a meaningful way, that's where I think hybrid publishing is great for a lot of authors, because we have distribution, we have most of us, not all
Hmm.
hybrids, but most hybrids have distribution, a sales mechanism. We're
Hmm.
really minding your quality, all those things. So I think it is a fabulous partnership for some authors.
That's terrific. And so let's back up just a little bit. You started in traditional publishing, and I think
Mhm.
that you were, what, 23 when you first started in the industry, and in your words, you were smitten with book publishing. And I can totally relate. Like, I know now that, like, I'm so madly, deeply in love with the industry that I will always do something. Although I would love to do a little more writing. But talk a little bit about those early years, and maybe where maybe the disillusionment happened.
Yeah, I mean, The first years was learning the ropes. I mean, I had a first job in publishing that lasted almost 5 years, finding my way. That was wonderful. Where I really fell head over heels in love was when I got the job at Seal Press. And Seal is a women's press. I mean, it changed my life in so many countless ways. I can't even list them. And I loved the books that we were publishing, and I loved the authors and everything about it. So it was a match made in heaven. Let's put it that way. And I talk about that too in my TEDx talk, how much I
Mhm.
just loved the work that we were doing at Seal. But coinciding with that time was a lot of shift in the industry, a lot of push toward a focus on marketing, toward the authors being what the marketing people like to call mediagenic. And mediagenic basically means looks good on camera.
Mhm.
And I felt that the focus was shifting away from what really mattered, which was the essence of the book, and onto, what's this author have, like
Mhm.
what's their star quality. And then that, of course, got worse and worse because Seal kept getting subsumed into bigger and bigger entities. So I did eventually leave, and part of that was a disillusion in what I saw happening in the traditional industry, which was this focus on author celebrity that was never the focus of the early days, where I came up. The focus was always
Mhm.
editorial, and
Mhm.
that started to shift.
And I mean, that's a huge shift though. I mean, that's that focus on just the star quality or, the commercial side of things. I mean, that's not to say that it's a bad thing to make money, right? Um, so when did you decide, "Oh, I don't see anything out there that is a model that I think works. I'm gonna create my own." Like, how did that come to be?
Well, it wasn't, it's not really how it unfolded. I
Yeah.
think I left traditional publishing thinking that I would be a book coach. It's like,
Okay.
I'm going to coach. And then I had this idea for She Writes Press, which was basically kind of assisted publishing. It's
Mhm.
like, well, I'm going to help people get published, but it's going to be a publishing company and blah blah blah. Like many good ideas, it was kind of half baked.
Yeah. But
And
now
so,
it's award winning, right?
yeah, exactly. And it really was the early days that
Mhm.
we shifted. I mean, it was within a year that I was like, oh wow, this is going to be my full-time job. Like the book coaching, which I still do, has
Mhm.
taken a total side seat to the publishing, because right away I was like, there's a need for it. Women are responding to it. And
Mhm.
I quickly started to tighten up the reins and define what we were doing as something different. It was not
Yeah,
assisted self-publishing, it was
right.
hybrid publishing. And then when that really shifted was once we got traditional distribution. So there was an evolution, but that evolution was, maybe it took like a year and a half
Mhm.
from the time that I launched until we were solidly doing something, um, that felt like it had a unique flavor to it.
That's awesome. So you talk about so there's traditional, there's self-publishing, there's assisted and hybrid. And I mean, in my experience, and I want to get your read on this, what has given sort of the hybrid publishing model sort of the bad reputation was some of the old style. And I talk about old as in, 10, 12 years ago, of the vanity publishing days.
Right.
So when you talk about the assisted publishing, it's like an author house kind of company, which has just blown out of the water. But I think of Ex Libris, I think of Lulu,
Yeah,
and that kind of thing. So what's your
sure.
read on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think that those companies are service providers, and some
Right.
of them have better and worse reputations. And I think that the reason that they get attached with the vanity label is because they literally accept anything.
Right.
They may or may not do good editorial work. I don't, they're missing that integrity piece that we talked about, with regard to like the editorial integrity and the production integrity.
Hmm.
And I know people who have had decent experiences on Lulu,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
it depends on what you're looking for. And so I think the problem that I have at the moment with the word vanity or vanity publishing in general is that it's intended to insult, right? It's intended to
Right.
be like, okay, well, this is clearly a piece of crap because the author paid. And within the pay to publish space, there's such a
There's a
vast
spectrum.
array of options. You have service providers who are literally just trying to offer authors a service. And then
Mhm.
you have people like us, who are authentic publishing companies,
Mhm.
with a real mission and also proven sales, by the way. And,
Mhm.
and so I think what's happening, and this is it's hard to be a nuanced person or to have a nuanced conversation in our current world because like they want to pile on and just be like, no, it's this. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not that. It's
Mhm.
actually there's a spectrum of publishing options. And I like to educate authors because it's important to understand that spectrum and to know what you're getting and not just,
Mhm.
point fingers and be like, that's good, that's bad.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are many, many of us out here who are doing beautiful work, and there are also bad actors in the space. And so
Mhm.
we're not going to be able to police all the bad actors, and the best thing that we can do is educate the authors, I think.
I think so, yeah. And I recently did a panel and talking about hybrid publishing, and one of the things that I like to emphasize is that there are traditional publishing companies that have hybrid offerings.
Right. Yeah, and always
And
have.
right, and when you try to identify them or
Mhm.
find, the thread that connects them, it's not easy to find.
No, well, they're certainly not advertising it.
Right,
And so I
right.
think that's the other thing. And the reason, when I started the hybrid uh, company, when I was like, oh, she writes is hybrid, that was a publishing model that I was familiar with because the first
Mhm.
publishing house that I worked at did hybrid deals with authors.
Okay.
So it was not outside of my understanding. And also it was never seen as anything problematic. In fact, those authors were seen as smarter
Mm,
because they were getting 70% royalties. So the ones who did well were making way more money than other authors.
mhm.
So I've always seen it as an entrepreneurial model.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that. Karen also says, as a lifetime entrepreneur who then published a book, it seems to me the hybrid publishing model helps bridge the gap between author
Yeah,
and entrepreneur because many authors don't want to know how to be business people. And it's interesting, Guy
right,
Kawasaki's book, Ape, Author, Publisher, Entrepreneur, really does highlight that
right.
connection, which I think is becoming more and
Yeah,
more recognized and important, for an author to understand
yeah,
before,
absolutely.
right, before they're even traditionally published, right? Which then brings me to the whole discoverability issue. It's a big challenge, one that my authors face, one that many authors, even traditionally published authors, face. Um, how do you address that to authors who maybe haven't started really building social media platform or anything like that?
Yeah. So with regard to discoverability, I mean, it's the same conversation as earlier about educating authors,
Hmm.
really getting them to understand what does it mean to promote your book? What does it mean to build an author platform? So it's an interesting thing because I'm not against the author platform. I mean, I think it's actually quite important. The thing that I'm against is that a publisher's sole decision about whether to publish an author is based on their
Hmm.
platform, and
Hmm.
how many followers they have, because you need a book to build an author platform.
Right.
And so once you have a book, even if it's just in production, you can really start to build your expertise and your author brand around the book. And so I
Hmm.
see what we do, oftentimes is giving authors a springboard into that. Discoverability comes from engagement. from being out in the world talking about your book. And it also can be writing articles. It can be doing things like this, podcast shows,
Hmm.
spreading the message that you have. Um, the book that you're talking about, Greenlight Your Book, is from, I think it's from 2016, maybe. And so it's something that continues to have meaning. I probably need to update it for like the 10-year anniversary, but
Hmm.
it is important thing to know that once you put a book out into the world, you can continue to promote it and talk about it and build your ideas around it forever. And
Hmm.
that's true for novelists and memoirists as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I've started working with authors who have zero, online presence to ones that have a significant amount and everything in between. So, I love to hear you talk about, it's okay to start from ground zero, right? And that is also
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of, hybrid publishing is, we're not eliminating those authors just from the get-go, right? So let's talk a little bit
Yeah, no,
about.
absolutely.
I'm going to bring up your She Writes Press site here, and tell us a little bit about this award-winning hybrid publisher.
Yeah, I mean, She Writes Press publishes books for women. We're exclusively female authors. It's been around now we're celebrating 11 years this month. We
Congratulations!
have signed over 1,000 authors. Yeah, thank you. Um,
Wow,
you know,
1,000.
what makes yeah yeah, I know it's kind of amazing, but what makes us a hybrid publisher, some of that is um articulated there on the site, but it's our submissions process.
Hmm.
We vet our submissions. We have traditional distribution, so we have a sales force that pushes our books into the marketplace, and
Wow.
we have good demonstrable sales. And then also the authors keep 60% of their royalties on print and 70% on ebooks. And
Okay.
that's another thing that's really important for us, that commensurate with the financial risk that they're taking, they get the lion's share of the profit as well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
this is, it really is a middle ground model. It's definitely not self-publishing. It's definitely not traditional publishing, but
Hmm.
people have to be able to wrap their minds around the business mechanics to see
Yeah.
like, okay, well, does it make sense for me? And do I understand it? And that's where I'm saying, like, in a black and white world, hybrid can be a little too nuanced for people sometimes.
Hmm. Absolutely.
so, so there's that. Yeah.
Well, I aspire for OC Publishing to be like She Writes Press. We're getting there. We're getting there. Very, very exciting
Yeah.
to watch. And when I first started 7 years ago, the term hybrid wasn't really common in the discussion. I called it partner publishing. And then I'm like, as I started seeing hybrid pubs, I'm like, wait, that's what we are. We're hybrid.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's
I
exciting awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're still partners with our authors, I think is also really key. And it's not that,
Hmm.
some of the smaller press or traditional publishers don't embrace their authors and, spend time and consider them a partner in the process. Um, but there's a lot of other differences. So with the few minutes we have left, let's talk a little bit about the your the Warner coaching and
Yeah. Yeah.
how
I mean,
how that works.
that's just another business entity, I guess. I mean, that's the coaching, right? Because
Hmm.
as I said, when I left Seal, I was like, well, you have to have a parachute before you jump, as everybody
Right.
knows. And I starting this little publishing company that I didn't think was going to make any money. And so this coaching practice that I've done for years I primarily coach memoirists, sometimes
Hmm.
novelists, and I love it. I mean, I don't think I would stop it because I like being in the trenches with authors. I mean, it keeps
Yeah.
me on my toes and understanding what people are going through. It keeps me more empathetic as a publisher.
Hmm.
And then in addition to doing this, I teach memoir classes. So like I have a 6-month memoir class. I do some craft classes. So I stay, I think, engaged out in the world with authors in lots of different ways. I mean, obviously as a publisher, but also as a coach, as an editor, as a teacher. And
Awesome.
I've always done that. And I like that I can.
Now, do you do these in person, online, or both? Like, what's the
Since the pandemic, it's all been online. We used to do a yearly conference called Magic of Memoir. And we'll
mm,
see if we do it again. I mean, I think one of the things that's been hard for people to come back in person is just the financials. You know, you're like,
yes,
oh gosh, it's crazy. The overhead for Zoom is so low, but people
right.
are creating inlines on in-person stuff too. So it's something for us
Mhm.
to consider.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, keep me posted. I do an annual in-person writing retreat. I started when I was living in Thailand, so I called it
Oh,
the
cool.
Paradise Writers Retreat. So it was in Phuket, Thailand. And then when I moved back to Canada, I thought, well, it's paradise here too. So I continued doing it. And
Yeah.
amazingly, we continued through the pandemic. I mean, we had to make some adjustments. And of course, in the height of it, they were only people from Nova Scotia who came, but generally I have people from all over the world. So nice to be opening up again. So do you have a plan for an in-person conference anytime
Not
soon?
yet, not
No,
yet.
okay.
I mean, it's in the back of my mind, as something that we may, revisit, but not this year.
Not this year. Okay. So any other like little nuggets? One of the things I thought we could just sort of touch on briefly as we wrap up is your 5 Ps of publishing success. That I
Yeah, oh
thought
my
was
gosh,
really I
yeah,
know it.
thank
It's a
you.
test, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's been so long since I've looked at those, so I love that you brought them up. Thank you. I mean, what do you, maybe you could tell me what they are and which one you want me
Yes.
to speak to? I remember
Yes.
like perseverance.
Yep. Patience, perseverance, platform publicity, and prolificness. I thought,
Right, right.
wow, how I mean, and each one of those is an entire workshop, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and it's just something, I mean, it's like I said, it's publishing success, right? I mean, some
Mhm.
people don't want to be prolific. Some people only have one book in them, and I think that's wonderful. It's important to
Mhm.
know like who you are and what you want to be. But I think
Yep.
what happens is that some authors they have stars in their eyes like, "Oh, I'm going to be this hugely successful author," and they're not
Right.
thinking big picture or down the road what
Mhm.
it takes to be a hugely successful author. It's not the case that most people just publish their first novel or their first memoir and then are met with massive success. And so
Accolades
that's
and yeah.
right, right. So that's where the platform comes in, the patience, the perseverance, the prolificness, all of those things are really important because authors are uniquely, and I say this with loving kindness, but they are uniquely delusional sometimes, and I think it's because people are like, oh, I have such an important book and I believe all of that to be true, but the world of book publishing is so big, you know?
The competition is fierce, and it's
Yeah.
just it's so true, and, I one of the first things I say is, "Why are you writing this book? What are your ultimate goals? What's your dream?" And realize that you may only sell to your family and friends, right? But
Yeah,
let's
that
just
could
get that out of
happen.
the way, right? I mean, we hope not, and we're gonna do everything we can, to try and,
But you need to have a publicity plan, you need
yes.
to have you need to plan for it. You can't just throw your book up on Amazon and then expect that, that you're gonna be met with success, right? And so
Absolutely.
that's why I think that this education piece for authors is so
Mhm,
profoundly important.
mhm, and we could do a whole other half hour on a publicity plan, couldn't we?
Yes,
What
absolutely.
just in the last minute or 2, when you talk about having your publicity plan ahead of time, what are
Yeah.
some 3 key messages that someone can take away from this saying, "Okay, if I haven't got a publicity plan yet, these are the things I need to start with."
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about someone who is planning to publish maybe in the next year, and
Or
I think that, Or two. Okay, sure,
Right.
perfect. I mean, I always talk to authors about like getting their baseline, which is the website, the online presence, cleaning up your social media, getting your author headshot consistent across social media, your website, so that you're looking clean and consistent and professional as an author across all of the online assets that you have. So
Hmm.
that's one that's really important and somewhat simple to do, but can require a little bit of like modernization or cleanup for some authors. Another one would be just to get very clear on what are your top 3 to 5 messages. What do you want people to know about your book so that you have some clarity about what it is that you're actually trying to offer? Because
Hmm.
sometimes people are like, oh, I work a lot with memoirists, right? So they'll be like, oh, well, I wrote the story of my life. And you're like, and this
And
pertains to your readers because
right, right.
so sometimes you just need to do that work of like, what is the message? What do I want my readership to get so that you
Hmm.
understand how to be online and what it is that you want to say? And
Hmm.
then beyond that, I think is getting a lot of clarity about, are you going to hire a marketing person or a publicist, or are you going to do it yourself? Because
Right.
if you're going to do it yourself, you have a lot of work to get that figured out. And
Yes.
to figure that out is not after the book is published, right? It's
Right.
it's like 6 months ahead of time. So either you're going to hire a publicist 6 months in advance who's going to really support you with that campaign, or if you're doing it yourself, then you need to figure out what your campaign is 6 months in advance. So there's
Hmm.
so much to know, and I think it can be kind of overwhelming, but the more you listen and the more you engage with the community, the better off you'll be.
Oh my goodness. Words of wisdom. And I spent 20 years in PR and marketing. So, it's one of those things I have to rein it in a little bit because I'm a publisher now. I'm not all things to all people, although, we try to do that. But I have loved this conversation. You've just given us so much food for thought. And I so appreciate you taking the time. And maybe you can come back at a later date and we can delve a little bit more deeply into this whole publicity realm because I think that's really key no matter how you're published.
Yeah, or I could turn you on to one of our publicists because we have
Okay.
we partner with a lot of different publicists, and we have an author handbook where we recommend publicists. So even though I feel like, I can speak to publicity, it's not
Hmm.
my space. And so I'd love to bring, to connect your audience to one of our publicists to come on and talk specifically to that because we have some great, really wise people.
Oh, you're on. Guaranteed. I'm writing that down. So I will, when we follow up, we'll definitely make that happen. I think that's a wonderful idea. Well, Brooke, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I've had such a good time. And
Thanks,
again, I really
Jen.
do. I really admire what you're doing and just keep it up. And I want to be part of the green light revolution. So just let's put that
It
out there.
sounds like you already are. I love it. So thank you. Thanks for joining me here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And we'll hang out just for a little while I wrap up here. And I want to thank everybody for joining me and Brooke Warner on the author journey this week, talking about hybrid publishing and other models and publicity and getting the word out on your book. So for now, I'm Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing, and I'll see you next time on the author journey. Have a great day.